All right, so look, here's what we want to do. If you weren't here last week, I really encourage you to go online and catch up with the teaching from last week, because we kind of introduced this idea of the importance of real friends with real benefits. And one of the things we talked about last week is that social experts, people who study these things, say consistently over and over. Two quotes that we pointed out to you last week was, one of them says, the immediate circle of friends that you spend the most time with will determine about 95% of who you are, right? This is David McClellan, an expert from Harvard University, said, he called them your reference group. The people with whom you spend the most time will determine up to 95% of who you are, right? And then Jim Rohn, who is an expert, he's deceased now, but he's an expert in personal development. He said, you are the average of the 5 people with whom you spend the most time. And so last week we just talked about the fact that if you stop and think about it, you probably are a lot like the people with whom you spend the most time. And therefore, it's incredibly important to make sure the people that you're spending time with actually are moving and growing. They're reflecting values that you are wanting to reflect in your own life. They're going in a direction that you're wanting to go with in your life. And the truth is, if they're not, you're probably not going to either. And so last week, we talked a little bit about a book that I read in preparation for this series by Dr. Henry Cloud. It's called The Power of the Other. And in this book, he says, well, guys, there we go. He says, you really can't get sustained high performance without deep connected relationships. All right? In other words, you may be able to do something really good once, but you aren't going to be able to keep doing it really good over an extended period of time if there's not someone or someone's investing into your life. If there's not someone that's coaching, if there's not someone that's giving some course corrections, if there's not someone that's giving input into your life, you will not be able to continually perform at a high level over an extended period of time. All right? Now, one of the things then we talked about last week is this is true in sports, it's true in music, it's true across the board. So I recently finished a book by Dr. Henry Cloud. Anybody hear of him ever? He wrote the book Boundaries, but he just released another book called The Power of the Other. And in this book, he talks about the power and the influence that people have on our lives. And so in this book, he goes on to talk about the 4 corners of connection. So I want to throw this up there. Can everybody see that good? The glare on the screen is good? Everybody see it all right? All right? So this is the 4 corners of a relationship. Let me just talk to you real quick about what this looks like. These people don't ever grow because no one is putting into them. These people will never grow because the only kind of input they get is negative. These people will never grow because the only thing they're interested in is false positives. These people are going to grow because they're getting both love, encouragement, and truth. All right? Now, the question that I asked you last week is, as you look at this, just take a moment. Where do you suppose that you are? Corner 1, 2, 3, or 4. You don't need to say it out loud. Where do you suppose that you are on this paradigm? So after this teach last week, I received a relatively good amount of feedback, and most of it was this. I don't have these kind of friends. I don't have a lot of these kind of friends, right? In fact, some people said, I don't have any of these kind of friends. How do I make those kind of friends? How do I make corner 4 friends? How do I make and sustain real friends with real benefits? So what I want to do is I want to show you today how to do that. But before I do, I actually want to give you 4 things to consider about real friends with real benefits, all right? Number 1, you are not going to have a lot of these kinds of friendships. There's no way that any person could sustain a lot of corner 4 friendships. In fact, it's more likely that you'll have 1, 2, 3, maybe 4 of these really intimate corner 4 friendships. All right? In fact, if you read through the Gospels, you read about Jesus, and Jesus is the person that we as Christians will always look to for his example. Like, how did he do it? So if you look at Jesus, you'll find that he was always surrounded by crowds of people who liked him. Right? Everywhere he went, there were crowds. There were people that liked him. So if he were alive today, like, he would have tons of followers on Instagram. His Twitter account would be bigger than Donald Trump's. I mean, he would be so incredible. Lots and lots of people that would like him, right? Right. And Hillary Clinton's or Bernie Sanders too, just so that we're equal opportunity right there, okay? And then there was a smaller group of disciples that really, the crowd engaged when Jesus was in town. But there was a smaller group called the disciples, and they would actually kind of follow him from town to town. So they were kind of like groupies, right? Like Jesus groupies. And then there was even a smaller group called the 12. The 12. These would be the apostles or the disciples. And these people, like, they went everywhere with Jesus. They would kind of be like the band, right? Like, they went to the same hotels. They did the same gigs. Like, wherever Jesus was, the 12 were. But you know what's interesting? Like, we know about the 12. We've heard about the 12 disciples, right? The 12 apostles. But did you know that out of the 12, there were 3 with whom Jesus had a really special relationship? Do you know who they were? Peter, James, and John. Out of the 12, so there's the crowd, the big masses, hey, he's really cool, I like him. And then there's a smaller group called the disciples, and they kind of follow him from town to town. And then there's the 12. These guys, they do everything with Jesus. And out of the 12, there's 3. But did you know that out of the 3, there was 1? You know who that one was? John. In fact, John is referred to as the one whom Jesus loved. He's the one who at the Last Supper sat right next to Jesus. I mean, even Jesus had a very small group of corner 4 friends. So I just want to say to you, if Jesus had a very small group of corner 4 friends, I think it's probably realistic to imagine that we're not going to have a huge group of corner 4 friends, but we're probably going to have a smaller group of corner 4 friends. Right? Now, second thing I want to run past you when it comes to thinking about these next real friends with real benefits, or corner 4 friends as we're calling them. These kinds of friendships take a long time and a lot of energy to develop. So if you're sitting here and you're hearing this series and you're like, yeah man, I'm going to make some corner 4 friends and in 2 weeks I'm going to nail it. Like I'm going to have some corner 4 friends and these are real friends with real benefits, 2 weeks. Well, let me just run this past you. It took Jesus 3 years to develop those kinds of relationships. This is Jesus, right? He's like Tony Robbins on steroids, right? I mean, he knows how to do relationships. He knows how to do love. He knows how to do truth. He knows how to do grace. It took him 3 years to develop these kinds of relationships, these kinds of friendships. Let me just tell you something. You're probably not going to develop corner 4 friendships overnight. It's just going to take a while. Now, third thing about corner 4 friendships. Not every friend will travel to corner 4 with you. There are some people right now in your life. They're your friends. But they're not going to be interested in going to the next level with you. They're not going to be interested in growing spiritually like you might be. They're not going to be growing. They're not going to be interested in every journey that you're taking. And so as a result, they may end up just being a friend, but not a corner 4 friend. It even happened to Jesus. In John chapter 6, Jesus was talking with a group of disciples, right? There was a good number of people around him. He was saying some things that were actually pretty difficult to hear. He was having a straightforward conversation with them. He was confronting some attitudes that they had. He was confronting a lack of faith that they had. And look what happened. At this point, many of his disciples turned away and deserted him. Right? These are the corner 3 people. I want to have a good time, and Jesus do some miracles, and let's eat some bread, and you can throw in some wine too. That'd be good. And let's just have a good time. And then Jesus began to point out some things in their life that were short, some attitudes, right? And they left him. So Jesus turned to the 12, remember that smaller group, and said, "Are you going to also leave?" Right? And so then he and Peter began to talk, and Peter said, like, look, Peter was one of the 12. He said, I'm committed to you. I'm staying in this. And then Jesus said this. Next slide. He said, I chose the 12 of you, but one is a devil. Like, stop for a minute. Do you have any friends you feel that way about? Like this person is literally the devil, okay? Jesus said that too. So there you go. You know, he said, he was speaking of Judas, son of Simon Iscariot, one of the 12 who would later betray him. So when I look at the life of Jesus, what I realize is that even Jesus had friends who were not willing to go to corner 4 with him. If you're very serious about taking your life to the next level, spiritually, emotionally, mentally, physically, across the board, if you're interested in going to the next level, there are going to be some friends that you have right now that are not going to go with you. It happened to Jesus. You can expect that it's going to happen to you. Right? So, we're going to talk about that later. And you're probably not, okay? So, let me give you the fourth point about these kinds of friendships. Real friends are worth the investment. People get better because of these relationships. If you can develop real friends with real benefits, if you can develop corner four friendships, it's absolutely worth it because you will get better and they will get better. You'll grow spiritually and emotionally and mentally and physically because of these people. Now, I have a corner four friend, and his name is Dan. And Dan and I have known each other for more than 20 years. And Dan is a lieutenant in the fire department, and I'm a preacher. So those conversations are always interesting, right? Like Dan will tell me something, he'll crack a joke, I'm like, dude, I'm a preacher, right? And then I'll tell him something, I'll crack a joke, he'd be like, dude, you're a preacher, right? But we've got this amazing relationship in which we hold one another accountable. Sometimes we say some really tough things to one another. There have been times we put our arms around one another and cried together. There have been lots of times that we've laughed together. We've had some amazing times as friends. We've gone on family vacations. But we've also had some really dark, tough times. I mean, when I went through this adventure of trying to start a brand new church that didn't ever get started, never worked, Dan was my friend. Dan stood with me when my heart was broken. Dan stood with me when when my courage was absolutely destroyed, when my faith was weak. Dan stood with me. And then I had a turn several years later. It was just a few years ago that Dan was here at our house, and on the way home, they were in a car accident. And long story short, as a result of that car accident, his wife had to have brain surgery. And so over the last couple of years, I've had the opportunity to walk with Dan through some really dark places. Sometimes when he was really mad at God. Sometimes when he really was skeptical about faith. Sometimes when he was really skeptical about life. I've had this opportunity to reciprocate. Dan and I, we know one another's secrets. We know the good about each other. We know the bad about each other. And yet, you know what? Every week we're in contact. Every day we're in contact via text. Every week we're in contact, most every week, via telephone. So this is a relationship that's incredibly valuable to me, and I wish and I hope that every person in our church can have this kind of a corner four friendship. So the question is this: how is this kind of a relationship established? So as I think about it, Dan and I established this kind of a friendship with intentionality. Like, we were intentional about building something like this. But I've never really thought in depth about this kind of a friendship until about a year ago. I began to really think about the why and the how of building deep, meaningful relationships that actually take us to the next level. And then I read something that Jesus said about friendship, and I thought, that's what we've done. Like, two Christian men have built a corner four friendship by following the principles that Jesus taught. Even if we didn't realize it at the time, that's actually what we did. And so what I wanted to do this morning is I wanted to show you those principles, and I want to show you, on the other hand, I want to flip those principles and show you some obstacles to real friends with real benefits, all right? So let me do this. John, who was Jesus' best friend, we talked about him a little earlier, he also wrote a biography about Jesus. It's in our Bible. It's called the Gospel of John. And it's in this biography that John writes about a conversation that Jesus was having with some of his friends. It's in John 15. Jesus is saying, look, if you stay relationally connected to me, if you stay close to me, if you keep trusting me, and you keep listening to the things that I say, and you do the things that I say, you're going to be fruitful. Now, in the Bible, fruitful means you're going to bear things like love and kindness and self-control and patience and courage and faith. Like, you're going to display these kind of characteristics, which, quite frankly, are likely to make you successful in relationships and much of what you put your hand to, right? So this is what Jesus said, and this is what I want to show you, the three elements of real corner four friendship. This is what he said. This is my commandment. Love each other in the same way I have loved you. There's no greater love than to lay down one's life for one's friends. You are my friends if you do what I command. I no longer call you slaves because a master doesn't confide in his slaves. Now you are my friends since I've told you everything the Father told me. Now, in those short sentences, Jesus gives us three things that are critical to developing real friends with real benefits, corner four relationships, right? Here's what they are: sacrifice, submission, and no secrets. Now, next week, we're going to spend some time talking about the cost of real friendship. If you want real corner four friendship, there's a cost. So we're going to talk a little bit more about these three next week, but let me just quickly summarize what they mean. Sacrifice, right? Jesus said, look, if you want real, deep, meaningful relationship, there's some sacrifice involved. He said, you'll actually lay down your life for your friends. You're willing to give up for your friends. You're willing to sacrifice for those kind of friendships. Then Jesus said, you'll do what I tell you. There's this idea of submission to one another. So let me just say this. When Jesus says, you'll do what I command, he's Jesus, and he asks for and deserves complete submission to the things that he says. Now, given that he's the smartest man in the room, that's actually not a bad idea. But later on, St. Paul writes in Ephesians 5:22 or 5:21 that we should submit to one another. This is something that as Christians we do to one another. We submit. Now, essentially, this means that we're willing to listen, we receive input from, we're willing to be corrected, and we're willing to receive input from others, wisdom from others. This basically means that there should be people in my life that are able and have permission to speak into my life, to say, I see attitudes, I see behaviors, I see habits that are not helpful for you, and I'm going to give you some input. And great corner four, real friends with real benefit relationships consist of submission. Me saying, please saying, I see that, I submit to that, you're right, I receive that input. Finally, this idea of no secrets. Look, there has got to be someone who knows everything about you. Because the things that you hide will be the things that hold you back from being the man or the woman God wants you to be. There's got to be someone who knows you fully, besides God. So those are the three elements of real corner four friendships that'll take us to the next level. But let me ask you, what happens if we don't do those things? What happens if we ignore Jesus' advice on building these kind of deep, meaningful, valuable relationships? What happens? This is where obstacles come up. And this is normally what happens. When we ignore Jesus' teaching in our life, it generally creates an obstacle to the life that God is calling us to. Let me show you how. Jesus said, real friendship requires total sacrifice. But we have a tendency to make a partial commitment. I mean, real friendship, corner four friendships are expensive. I mean, you know what I'm talking about? Like, these are the kind of friendships, they cost a lot of time. They require energy. They'll even get into your checkbook from time to time. But Jesus said the greatest love is shown by our willingness to inconvenience ourselves for our friends, to even lay down our life for our friends. Now, let's be honest. There are days where I don't even want to pick up my phone for my friend, much less lay down my life. Am I the only one? There are days where when I see the phone ring and it's Dan, if you're watching the series, buddy, I'm sorry, but listen, there are days when I see the phone and it's Dan and I think, oh my, I can't. Jesus says corner four friendships, real friendships, require sacrifice. We have a tendency, however, to make partial commitments, which basically means I'll be your friend as long as it's convenient. The truth is, like, we're busy, we're tired, we live with very little margin in our lives. Am I right? Hello? Okay. Y'all are staring at my glasses, aren't you? You're like, who is that guy? All right. We live with very little margin in our lives. And so there's not a lot of space to conveniently build corner four friendships. So I know, like Dan and I right now, we're planning a retreat later this year. We're going to plan some time to get away, to really dig into each other's lives. We're going to explore. We're going to ask questions. We're going to pray for one another. We're going to study together. And the ultimate goal being to become better followers of Jesus, better husbands, better fathers, better friends. But I'm going to shoot straight with you. Finding time to do that is tough. Because basically what it means is I'm going to have to carve out a chunk of several days to go away. I don't have that kind of margin in my life right now. Jesus basically says, look, real friendship is going to cost us something. But when we look at real friendship and see the inconvenience that it can be, the truth of the matter is sometimes it's easier to just kind of keep it corner three. Let's just have a good time. But let me just say this. Real friends with real benefits cannot be developed in the margins of your life. They require more than leftovers. They're going to require a substantial amount of energy, of time, and attention. This is how we build corner four friendships. I just read this week, someone said, look, if you would just commit, that thing that you really want in your life, what is it, that goal, that dream, that idea, if you would just commit 30 minutes a day to that thing, think how much further up the road it would push your commitment. Think how much progress you would make from just 30 minutes a day. I would just say, if we were to commit 30 minutes a day to nurturing a real friends with real benefits kind of relationship, what could happen? Might be surprised. So partial commitments are an absolute obstacle to real friendships. And then there's this matter of input or submission. Jesus said that real friendship requires that we listen and submit. He said, if you're my friends, you'll keep my commands. You'll do what I say. Essentially, real friendship requires that we listen and submit. But we have a tendency to refuse input. Hearing the hard truth about yourself is tough, right? Like when somebody says to you, I see this attitude in your life, and it just doesn't line up with what I think you want in your life. It's tough to hear. Accepting it, believing on it, and changing our behavior based on that input is even tougher. But that's absolutely what's necessary to grow and get better, isn't it? I mean, think about this. The top performers in the world have a constant stream of input into their lives. The top performers in the world have coaches. I'm always amazed. Like if you look at vocalists, if you look at athletes, if you look at top tier CEOs, they all have advisors. They all have people who are giving input and speaking into their lives. And the top performers who stay at the top are those people who actually listen to and keep listening to that input. Remember Dr. Cloud's statement. He said, you really can't get sustained high performance without deep, connected relationships. And here's what I'm afraid what happens sometimes. I know I have this tendency, and my guess is I'm not the only one. Is that when someone begins to give input into our lives, they begin to speak into our lives with a serious conversation, we begin to get defensive, we deny, we resist, we try to explain it away, and we even begin to hide and avoid those people from the very input that could make us better if we would listen and submit to that kind of input. I love the book of Proverbs, and one of the first things it says in Proverbs chapter 1, verses 1 through 7, Solomon says, listen, I've written these books, and wise people will read it and will get wiser. People who have understanding will read it and gain knowledge, but the fool will never read it. The fool will never listen to input. If you're interested, this is so critical. If you're interested in growing to the next level, you have got to have people who love you in your life who are willing to speak into your life, but the next most important thing is that you're willing to receive it. I mean, I know this, listen, I'm not ready to spend my time telling an adult the same thing over and over and over and over. After a while, I'm just going to shoot them. I'm just kidding. I can't do it. I'm just going to stop, right? Isn't that true? Do you have people in your life you're like, I've told them this 3 times, I'm not going to tell them again. Have you ever had that in your head? You ever say that in your head? Right? They're not going to grow now. They're not going to get better. They're not going to improve because they're not willing to receive input. At some point, corner 4 friendships, if you're not willing to receive input, that friendship is going to diminish. And that friend will soon fade away. This is really important. There are lots of lonely people who wonder why they're lonely. I'm going to tell you right now, because they won't receive input. They won't receive truth. They don't have anyone in their life who will speak into their life. And the reason they don't have anyone who will speak into their life is because every time that person tries, they get defensive or they deny or they make excuses. And after a while, wise people begin to walk away from that. So just this week, I went to 2 close friends and gave them permission, as I'm processing this, gave them permission to speak honestly into my life. One of them is a trainer at my gym, and the other is a friend whose life advice I value tremendously, spiritually, mentally, across the board. Both have been given permission to honestly, with no holds barred, speak freely into my life. And I basically told them like this: if you hurt my feelings, and it lasts longer than a day, I'll come back to you, right? I'll just say, that was kind of tough, right? But what I realize is I can't get better. I can't get better physically, spiritually, mentally, if I don't have people who are going to say strong things into my life. Now, if your friends, let me just say this, and I want to move to the next point. If your friends laugh and party with you all the time into destruction, then I have to wonder if they're your friends at all, right? If your friends are always here, everybody's always laughing, everybody's always having a good time, it's always a joke, I have to wonder, are these people going to help me grow better? Or are we all just going to someday wake up and say, my life kind of sucks? Because nobody ever actually spoke truth into my life. My prayer is that you and I will all have people that will love us enough to say hard things into our life with an arm around our shoulder, and that we'll be wise enough to receive it. Now, there's one more obstacle to corner 4 friendships. Jesus said, real friends keep no secrets. But we have a tendency to keep secrets. Now, let me just say right up front that not everyone in your life is your BFF. Don't put your crap on Facebook. Can I get a witness? Good gosh, right? It's just not helpful, and it's not tremendously wise for us to unveil everything to everyone. But it is helpful and it is wise for us to reveal everything to someone. And that someone is your real corner 4 friend. So here's what I've found about secrets, and probably you have too. That my secret will always be the lid on my growth. That thing that I'm hiding will always be my boss. That thing that I'm hiding will always sit on me. And the only way to get rid of that secret is to tell someone. So, unhealthy people keep secrets. They hide things. They won't let anyone fully know them. And if that's you, let me just say to you, you're going to live the rest of your life unhealthy. If you're hiding secrets, you're going to live the rest of your life a prisoner to that secret. And the only way to be free of that is confession. Confess to Jesus, confess to a friend. And what we found is that people who share secrets destroy the power of the secret. So, question. Do you have anyone in your life who knows the real you? Anyone in your life that knows everything about you and still loves you? Do you have someone in your life that knows your secret and still will put their arm around you, hold you accountable, encourage you, pray for you, confront you when they must? That's a corner 4 friend. So as I'm reading through all these things, right, I look at these 3 obstacles to real friendship: partial commitments, refusing input, keeping secrets. It occurs to me that you cannot make deep friendships with shallow commitments. You cannot have corner 4 friendships if you're only willing to make a shallow commitment. The kind of friendships that God will use to grow us spiritually, that He'll use to grow us emotionally and mentally, require a deep commitment. We're going to talk next week a little bit about the costs of this kind of commitment. It will require time, energy, honesty, love, and intentional effort. But when you put that kind of effort in, at least two people grow. You and the person that's on the other end of the friendship. Now, after Jesus talked with his friends about all this, he said something. He said, "You didn't choose me, I chose you." There's a level of intentionality there. I chose you to be my friends. I appointed you to go and produce lasting fruit. Like this is Jesus saying to his friends, this is my intention for this relationship, that you would actually go and do something that's extraordinary as a result of this friendship, that you would be better as a result of this friendship. I appointed you to go and produce lasting fruit so that the Father will give you whatever you ask for, using my name. Now listen, you know what I've found about the best friendships? And think about this. Think about it in your own life. The best friendships in my life make me better spiritually. They make me more alert to God. They make me more alert to the things that I cannot see with my eyes, things like love. The best friendships make me more aware of love, of faith, of wisdom, of courage, of passion. And when I have the ear of God the Father, and the friendship of Jesus, and the friendship of a corner four friend, I'm set up to do something significant and valuable. And that's the whole beauty of corner four friendship. So what I want to do today is just real quick, all right? Everybody all right? We got just a couple minutes. What I want to do is I want to give you 3 action steps for today. My prayer is, as we've talked about these obstacles, maybe you've seen I'm keeping secrets, or I don't receive input well, or maybe you are you just don't make time to nurture healthy friendship. Maybe you've seen that in your life. Let me give you a couple ideas that might help you just to nurture and begin to grow real friendships with real benefits, right? These are not on the screen. I'm just going to give them to you. 3 things. Number 1, just take the initiative to walk across the room to someone that you might want to have this kind of a relationship with. Now, look, there are some people that you know right away. I don't want to be in a corner four friendship with that person. I wouldn't want that, all right? But there are people in your life that you think, that's a person that I could grow with. Let me give you a couple questions to ask. When you're thinking about who might be that person in my life, am I willing to be inconvenienced by a friendship with this person? Are they likely to feel the same way about a friendship with me? Like there are some people, when you see their name on the phone, you're like, oh no, no. And there are some people that feel the same way about you, right? They see your name like, oh no. That's probably not corner four material, right? Am I willing to listen and submit to this person? Are they likely to do the same with me? Listen, there are people who want to offer physical advice, and I'm just going to shoot straight with you. I'm not prepared to receive physical advice from them. There are some people that are prepared to offer relational advice, and I'm going to shoot straight with you. I'm not prepared to receive relational advice from them. And there may be people who are not prepared to receive advice or input from me. We're probably not going to be corner four buddies. A third question, as you're walking across the room to identify this person, it would be this. Am I willing to tell that person my secret? Are they likely to tell me their secret? If not, then we're probably not going to be corner four friends at some point. If so, then perhaps there's potential for a corner four, real friends with real benefits kind of relationship. So as you're looking to build this kind of relationship, number 1, let me just say to you, at some point you have to take booty off seat, put feet on floor, and move across the room, right? Take some initiative to begin to nurture this thing. Walk across the room and begin a conversation. Second thing, I want to encourage you here, because at some point you're probably going to hear some form of, I can't be your corner four friend, right? Some people just aren't willing to go there. Some people don't want to be the kind of man that you want to be. Some people don't want to be the kind of lady that you want to be. And so they're not going to travel there with you. Some people have a full friend tank. In other words, I am relationally maxed out, right? So this week, there was one day that we had in our house 10 children. Our 6, and then Mrs. Peterson was babysitting 4. That's 10 kids in my house. I'm going to be honest with you. If you would have called and said, hey, can I bring my kids over? I'd been like, dude, I love you, but I'm maxed out. No kids, no more kids in my house, right? And there are times relationally where we're just like, I can't remember, because real corner 4 friendships are costly. They require sacrifice. And you may find yourself in a position where you're like, I cannot possibly nurture any more deep relationships. So let me say to you, if you approach someone, it may be possible that they're relationally maxed out. Their tank is full. It has nothing to do with you. You're a great person. If one of their corner 4 friends dies, boom, you're in, baby, right? Again, not a reflection on you. It just means they're not ready, or they don't have the relational margin right now. And that leads me to the third thing. If the person you approach is not able to or not willing to, would you prayerfully keep working to develop a real corner 4 friendship? Because it's these kinds of friendships that will ultimately take us to the place where God wants us to be. It's going to take a long time. It will require a lot of work. There's going to be some tears. There's going to be some celebration along the way. But it's these kinds of friendships that make us better and that ultimately bring glory to God. And what I want to do is I want to wrap up by telling you this. The best friend I have is Jesus. He is extraordinary. He knows everything about me. And yet he still puts his arm around me. He still listens to me when I talk. He still invites me to speak with him. From time to time, he whispers into my heart. I said heart and pointed out my ear. Did you catch that? My heart's up here. He whispers into my life often through this. Sometimes he impresses in my heart, gives me ideas through my heart, corrects me through my heart. He's my hands down best friend. And then I have my bride, who I absolutely adore, best friend. But God has blessed me with some other men in my life who are corner 4 friends, who speak with strength and authority. They can confront me and often do. They celebrate with me and often do. And they make my life better. And my prayer is that you will have these kinds of relationships in your life so that we can all grow to be everything that God has cut us out to be. Now, what I want to do is I want to invite a man up to close us in prayer today. A man who's taught me probably, I've seen him model friendship at a level I've never seen it modeled. Jim Ockenfels. God brought Jim and Terry to our church. Jim, if you want to come on up. God brought Jim and Terry to our church a couple of years ago. And I've grown to love and appreciate Jim. I see him as a brother in Christ. I see him as a father figure, one who goes ahead and demonstrates and models the way to develop deep and valuable friendships. Jim does it as good as I've ever seen anybody do it. I've never seen anybody, honestly, do friendship as well as Jim. And I'm incredibly grateful for Jim's influence in my life, in the life of our church. And so, Jim, I've asked you, if you would, to close us out in prayer today. God bless you, sir.
It's a tough lead-in to stand up here and pray, but I'll try to be open and transparent with all of you. I don't feel quite measuring up to that. But Lord, through you, I can, and all of us can measure up to that with your help and your guidance. So my prayer today would be for every person in this room, as every person that's a part of Church 180 or just visiting, that you will move in their hearts and move in the hearts of others whom could become corner 4 friends with real benefits. And with the joy of having those kind of friends, not so much pain and cost, but they're greatly outweighed by the pleasure and the joy of having individuals in my life who guide me and direct me and challenge me pull me up short. Give me a kick in the seat when I need it. Father, I pray that there would be individuals for every person in this room that they could enter into a wonderful relationship with. Most of all, I pray that they would be in relationship with you, the greatest friend. I echo Paul's words, the greatest friend that I have is you, Jesus. So, Father, I close the service by saying, I pray with all sincerity that you would move in the hearts of the individuals here who need to cross that line of faith and walk with you. And then I pray for those who need to move and cross that line of faith and reach out to find a wonderful friend. In your precious name, Jesus. Amen. In Jesus.